Well, thank you, and I appreciate your being here very much. We are excited to begin your journey as a family, or if you've been with us, to continue that journey with another son. I'm Brad Joya. I think I know many of you through the process, and I wanted to say, after talking with Kit Lecklider in the admissions office earlier today, that she reminded me of just how great you were during the COVID-19 process, and that we felt and feel really good about this incoming group of students and families, because how you dealt with us at a time that was more complicated. Your flexibilities, I think, say a lot about what we hope for in terms of the next years at MBA. This is a relatively quick program. We're not going to keep you long tonight. And I'm trying to illustrate that we try to begin our programs when we say we're going to begin them, because we want to respect your time and keep on time throughout the night. So I'll make some comments. Greg Farrell will make some comments. We'll show you a brief film, and then we'll divide up into two groups so that the 7th and 8th grade families stay here and the high school families go to another location, which Greg will explain when he is at the podium. We'd love to have music at all of our events, and this is the first, since January, the first time we've had assemblies in here. So we had one this morning. Typically when we have an assembly right now, because of the restrictions on numbers, we have about half the school in here. And the way we've done the assemblies is that the advisory groups come in and then those that are not here watch the assembly virtually. And then we rotate the groups each week. So this morning at the program, we had some music from our orchestra, and we will now hear some music from our headmaster singers. This balcony area behind me has proved to be a good place in this new event center to have the music. And the music always kind of adds a dimension to programs like this, and I think it communicates that we value all the activities at school, particularly the music. Michael Calavito, who's up behind me, will lead our headmaster singers. So please join me in welcoming them.
Southward
I think we have a little smaller group tonight. I bet activities got in the way. I just came from a soccer game, so you'll hear in my comments that a lot of our students are involved with many different realms, and we think that's very critical. And we also appreciate, as I said, their singing, especially after, I'm sure you've had a busy day, and it's nice just to sit down and collect yourselves, and now we'll be focused on the topics at hand. So thank you very much. I have about 5 topics I want to discuss tonight, just to kind of reinforce some of the issues that you may have heard me talk about, or Greg or others talk about when we've had meetings with you during the admissions process. MBA has a good long history, over 150 years. This is the 154th year. I will say in complete honesty, as many of you have heard me mention before, I did not think about the school being a boys' school when I first interviewed for the job in 1994. And I've loved finding out about boys' schools. And I don't think that a school is better because it's a boys' school or a girls' school or a co-ed or a public or a private school. I think a school's culture is what really defines it and distinguishes such. But we do have a great history and tradition, and very few schools in our country have that continuous legacy that MBA has. We have a beautiful campus. In fact, we have 3 campuses. This particular campus at Harding Road has about 50 acres. This brand new building has been a blessing for us. It opened in January, and it provided a lot of great indoor space at the time of the year when it was colder, and the virus really called for having that indoor space and way to spread out on the campus. But it offers, I think, a good window into what the school's all about. You know, it's an athletic building. It is a sort of student center. It's a place to come. It's a place for all 820 students at MBA. It's not meant to sort of be anyone's domain. It's meant to be everyone's building. And we've been really grateful to have this on the campus. So we have about 10 buildings on this land of the 50 acres I mentioned. You'll find that almost all the buildings have been recently updated or rebuilt. So you are entering MBA at a time when you'll have great facilities. We have, as I said, 2 other campuses. We have 10 acres about a mile and a half from here in Sylvan Park. And we have about 200 plus acres on a mountaintop that people like Greg Farrell love to go to, and our art classes and our teams. And in fact, our 7th grade, as Ms. Stewart will mention, is going up there this Friday. We're finally feeling like we can utilize a lot of this space after doing some other building up there. We built cabins, and we built a great pavilion, and we built yurts. And so we're excited to kind of expand the opportunities, the education, the curriculum for the students. The routines are pretty straightforward at MBA. Boys get here early, probably around 7 to 7:30. We've just opened the dining hall back up, so if you came early in the morning, you'd see a number of boys come and have breakfast, and we love to see that because they're coming to kind of begin their work, to see their friends, to set a sort of standard of routine and expectation for themselves each day. At 10 till 8 each day, we begin school with an advisory period, which is very important to me and I think to the community. It's a way to say we have these groups of small families of about 10 or so students with each teacher, and we know these boys really well. The system is vertical, so that in the junior school in 7th and 8th grade, you have 7th and 8th grade students together, and in the high school, you have 9th through 12th grade students. So there's a lot of education in that morning program. They learn about college applications from the seniors. They get a sense of what it's like to be a freshman and to make friends with the seniors. So those are really important times in the morning. And then students are here in classes. Typically a student has 5 or 6 classes, a lunch period, and 1 or 2 study halls, depending on whether he has 5 or 6 classes. The school day ends just after 3. And students are typically here until 5:30 to 6:30. I was just out at the soccer game, as I mentioned. That'll go on till about 7:30 or so, and so you'll see activity on the campus all the time. It's not an accident. The school, in a way, operates very much like a boarding school campus. I don't think it's accidental that the film Dead Poets Society, which was derived from MBA through the writings of Tom Schulman, is set in a boarding community. One of the things I really appreciate about the school is its sense of community, its balance, its involvement. You would have heard that if you were here this morning. Two of our seniors, Tanir and Michael, spoke about academics, but their comments were focused on the way they balanced their life at MBA, in Michael's case through lacrosse and studies, in Tanir's case through a lot of academic leadership. And Tanir spoke primarily, even though he's a very academic student, I teach him, I know him well, he got into Penn tonight. One of his classmates just wrote me a few minutes ago and said, this boy's already going to Penn. He said, did anyone else here? And I said, yes, 2 others. And so there's a sense of celebration among the boys for one another, and that's a really important characteristic. And that's what Tanir talked about this morning in his speech, was that brotherhood, that camaraderie, that sense of support. It's really great to see a guy like Tanir, who's involved with programs like mock trial and science, think more about brotherhood and relationships. The people at MBA are what is more important than these buildings, even more important than the history and traditions in most respects. Just a couple of weeks ago, I had an email from one of our great teachers, head of the language department, Daniel Paoliki. He said, good morning. I hope you are enjoying your Friday. As you may already know, William Myers has been working with our virtual ESL classes that I host every Tuesday and Thursdays from 7 to 8 p.m. for Nashville's adult immigrant community. He wrote to me last night following his lesson to share a breakthrough that he had with his adult student. I thought you would enjoy reading it, as it highlights the care that he puts into his lessons and the genuine relationship that he has developed with his adult student. He writes to Senor Paoliki, I am so pumped up right now. I was trying to teach SETI how to create infinitive forms of verbs in English and then turn those into sentences. She was struggling for almost the entire class, and I felt as if she just wasn't going to understand it. Then it all clicked. She figured it out, and it was the most amazing moment. My heart is still racing here 15 minutes later, and I'm still grinning from ear to ear. I must say, tonight's class was one of the best experiences I've ever had with the Spanish language. SETI even stopped to express her thanks because she feels that she can finally form English sentences. That was awesome. This morning, William was sitting right in front of me, and I asked him about this email. And it struck me, as it probably will you as well, that William also mentioned, that he's loved being on the hockey team, a team that won the state championship this year. But he said that I love even more the chance I have to tutor. And to hear a boy, open himself up like that, express these interests is what I hope your sons will see when they're at MBA, and that they'll have that vision and that balance and make our school and community a much better place. And as I often say, not just be 4 or 6 years of education, but be a lifetime, that they'll have the skills that William showed in this note and have the emotional intelligence to be a better man. So we're proud you're here. We hope you enjoy this quick program tonight. And I'm going to turn it over now to Greg Farrell. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. This is the part of the program every year, and then I think every year, and I was just talking to some parents a few minutes ago and realized, and Kit and I had been talking about this, we didn't get to have this program last year. We kept postponing, hoping that we could do it, and eventually May came around, and we felt like it was time we had to move on and get parents and students some information about what was coming up. So we did this virtually, and we, at that time, like all of us, I think, we didn't even know what that meant. I mean, Mark Artisan, who's up in the booth right now, you know, he's talked me through what the difference between live stream, which is what we have a lot of people doing tonight, and what a Zoom meeting is. And so that night we had an attempt at a Zoom with 300 or so parents, you know, representing about 150 boys, and it was great. The parents were fantastic, and you know, the students this year that came in have been great. But I can tell you this is much, much better, and I just love being here with everybody tonight and celebrating this. And it really does make a huge difference that we had a year off from that and are able to come back together. This is the part where I say, okay, what does the profile of your son's class look like? 161 new students at MBA. Your sons are coming in with 160 classmates or schoolmates. They represent 30 different zip codes. 44 schools are represented amongst those 161 students. 7 states, so 6 states outside the state of Tennessee. And we're so appreciative to families moving to Nashville from out of state, and I've really enjoyed getting to know some of them. Some I just made the trip from California tonight to be here tonight for this, and we have a lot visiting on this event on streaming, live stream tonight as well. 34 siblings, 31 sons of alumni, and I've looked around tonight and I've seen a lot of MBA alumni who will have their son come in here next year and are excited about that. Your sons have shown a tremendous interest in the arts, whether it's visual arts, music, theater, all of those pieces. It's been amazing. This year, for the first time, I put together just a little piece, and everybody who mentioned something about the arts and their application, and I put it together for the arts teachers in theater, visual arts, and music, whether it's chorus or orchestra or jazz band. And you wouldn't believe how big that document became that I eventually sent over to the arts department. It was amazing. Athletics, your sons are involved in just every kind of athletic endeavor and have found a way to really, be able to be a teammate and learn the importance of that, having someone lean on them, and they then in turn lean on someone else on a team. And we're appreciative of those athletics. In debate and mock trial, I've had more parents and students ask me about those endeavors at MBA, and we're really proud of that part of MBA. In academic competitions, and just academics in general, but academic competitions, whether it involves robotics or science Olympiad or math counts or anything like that, your sons are very, very interested in that. I could go on and on and on. I know you don't want me to, but it is amazing the depth and breadth of interest that your sons represent. So if you get anything out of tonight, I've told several parents you're probably going to get a little bit of an information overload tonight, but we got a lot of time to sort that out, and I'm going to come back up in a minute after a film and talk a little bit about that too. But if you get anything out of this tonight, I hope from Mr. Joya's talk a few moments ago to a film that you're going to see momentarily, that you get the idea that there are lots and lots and lots of opportunities here for your son. And we want them to stretch, and we want them to try new things and take advantage of those opportunities that this school affords. So I am going to show a film here in just a moment that is just a clip that Barry McAllister has put together. He does a lot of our film work here at MBA, and it's just a small wedge of the pie that took place from January through March of this year. And remember, we're in a pandemic, right? and you're going to see things that took place January through March here at NBA. And this is, I mean, he could have made this video an hour long, and I said, you got to keep it to 5 minutes. And so you're going to see a lot of clips going by. And you're going to see things like what Mr. Joya mentioned, our assemblies, concerts like Chalophony that we just had recently, gatherings. We've just had a couple of, Robert Sawyer has led a couple of father-son campouts up at our Long Mountain campus. We've got a mother-son breakfast coming up next week, but father-son dinner here just a week or so ago. Theater, plays in the high school, in the junior school. You're going to see a wild thing that we do right after spring break every year. Everybody comes back sunburned, and we have field day immediately, and it's a lot of fun. And you'll see the Cardinal flag flying out at the field when you leave. That means Cardinal won this year's field day. You're going to see clips from our basketball state championship as well. We're very, very proud of those guys in basketball this year, and it's our first state championship in basketball since 2010. So I want to turn this over and let Mark show you this video, and then I'm going to come back and talk about what we're going to do the rest of the evening. Thanks, Mark.
Center is getting an amazing young man whom I am proud of, and he is going to represent NBA well. Mark, congratulations and good luck on your journey at center.
Thank you, Triumvirate. But if you fail to prove yourself innocent of sorcery, you shall die horribly. Then I'll certainly try my best. But I need Sawyer and Lester to play their parts.
Over time and pain, he grew and he did learn right from wrong. His worst day had happened, and he survived it.
What ensues is a 24/7 bombardment of political propaganda that is targeted at someone just like you. And they try to get away with it.
So they asked me, we had advised them on an M&A transaction and acquisition in Atlanta.
There's different companies actually putting the work in place.
And that words cannot truly describe how important a strong relationship with a father is to any boy.
I came home in a state I can only compare to shell shock, and told my dad, nearly breaking down into tears, that I would never be able to memorize this list.
Dumplings around those times, and there's like a holiday called Duanwujie. It's like dragon boat racing.
So we respect the kind of dead year system, and we come to get together, and then we celebrate the family reunion.
I'm a little bit different from Jason because I was born in China. I grew up in China. I finished my education in China.
Do you know exactly where it is? No, please tell me. Do you know? A man's life is at stake here. Do you know where the bedroom is?
So, like I said, I hope you got an idea of just a few of the many, many opportunities here. This morning I was thinking about what do I want for breakfast, and thought, oh, I'm going to have some toast with some honey on it. And I went to the pantry, and there was a jar of MBA honey that the beekeeping club at MBA put together and sold for money for a charity and everything. So, you know, from beekeeping club to anything that, I mean, you can just go through the whole list of over 60 different clubs here. Lots of opportunities for your son. So hopefully you're going to start learning more about that tonight and getting some great information from some folks as we kind of move to the next phase of this. Some last kind of items, some housekeeping items from me. In the next few days, you're going to receive a couple of letters in the mail. The first one of those is going to be from Mark Artisan, our Director of Technology here at MBA. That letter is going to be addressed to your son. It's going to have instructions for your son about setting up his MBA email account and logging on to Scholar. Now, not going to be much for him to see on Scholar right now because we don't have any real homework for him yet to be graded, but he can log on and see how that Scholar is going to be set up, but he also is going to be able to log on to his email account. A word about this, please let your son take care of this. It's a great way for him to start taking ownership of his MBA experience right now. So if he needs help, help him, but let him take the initiative on this part. A second thing you're going to get is from Kit Lecklider, and it is a padded manila envelope, and it is also going to be addressed to your son. It actually does have your son's first assignment, and that assignment you're going to read about. It's what's called a hopes and dreams letter, and so I want you to read through that with your son. And there's also a welcome letter in there, and then there's also a small gift from MBA that will welcome him as a member of his class at MBA. So look for those two things in the next few days. I think the letter from Mr. Artisan is going to go out in the mail in the next day or two, and the manila envelope went out today. So watch for those. In a week or so, if you don't have them, give us a shout. Lastly, and Mr. Joya stole my thunder because he's been talking to Ms. Lecklider about this. I really do want to thank you all for everything you did this year, from when we were trying to schedule shadow days, when we were trying to schedule tours, when we were trying to schedule events. You all have been great sports about it. And when we've had to call 2 days before a shadow day and say, hey, we've had kind of an uptick, and we need to postpone that for a few weeks, you went right along with it. So thank you so much. It helped us help you get to know more about MBA, and we really do appreciate your flexibility with all of that this year. Now, for the plan. And so I'm talking to everybody in this room, and I'm also talking to the folks who are watching this via live stream. For everyone, the Big Red store is going to be open again tonight when we all finish. And so it's located right over on the other side of this lobby. If you'd like to go purchase something, stock up on gear. If you'd like to get home, though, you've got plenty of other opportunities to visit the Big Red store anytime. And then I've also sent a link to the online store, and that's a great way to take a look at and purchase some things that you want as well. The Mothers Club is also in charge of our Blazers and More sale, and we have our first Blazers and More sale of the spring coming up next week on April 13th. I guess that's a week from today, maybe. And that is a fantastic way to come over to MBA and buy a blue blazer. All the boys at school today wore a blue blazer and a tie for our cum laude inductions. It's about 6 times a year they'll wear a coat and tie to school. And you all know they are growing quickly right now. And so instead of going someplace and dropping $250, $300 on a blue blazer that in 3 months is going to look like this, you can come over here and buy blazers and more, khakis, button-downs, polos, things like that that have been sent back to the school that are used, and you're able to get it at a much, much reduced price. That's going to take place right after our mother-son breakfast on next Tuesday on the 13th, so I assume that's probably around 10 a.m., and will run to about 1 p.m. I have included a link to that in the last couple of Thursday emails to everyone, and I'll include it on this Thursday's email as well. That takes me to something else. This tonight is kind of our first event that's kind of turning you over from admissions over to the school, but we are still a liaison for you. And you'll still continue to receive emails from me each Thursday as teachers, coaches, staff members let us know of things that you might be interested in learning about MBA or that your son needs to know more about. We'll continue to send that out to you. But you'll also start getting emails from those folks as well. But make sure that you just let us know if you've got any questions. We're still here for you and can direct you to the right place.
All right, good evening again. Welcome to the elite exclusive high school portion of the evening. My name is Tim Boyd. This is Robert Sawyer. I'm the academic dean and he's the dean of the high school, and we'll be each doing a sort of short presentation this evening, and then we'll open it up for general questions. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the academic process going forward and the expectations that your son might expect once he arrives here. And then Robert will talk about the kind of student life aspect of it. And in terms of the presentation, this puts me at a little bit of a disadvantage because his presentation is full of fun campus events with photos of boys smiling and, carnival atmosphere and all that sort of fun. And I'm here to talk about grades and homework. And I struggle to find sort of photos of boys joyously opening their textbook or doing homework. So you just have to imagine the enthusiasm that they bring to that on a daily basis. But the first thing to talk about is what's going to be coming up before the end of this academic year. And the most important thing from my standpoint is that we're going to plan the schedule for your sons for next year. And the way this is going to work, you'll receive a letter from the admissions office asking you to schedule an appointment where we will do that sometime in the next few weeks. You may already have had a chance to do that. If you haven't had a chance to do that, Kit Leckleiter is the person who coordinates it all. She can be reached by phone or by email. The meetings typically will take around 30 minutes, sometimes a little less, sometimes a little more, but 30 minutes is about right. And ideally, the student and at least one parent should be present. Sometimes it's not possible to find a time that everyone can make, but as long as the student is there and one parent is there, these meetings don't have to be absolutely final and definitive. Very often they end with, well, we've settled sort of 80% of the questions, and here's the remaining ones we're thinking about. But it's just useful to have as many people there as possible. These can be done in person, we can do them on campus, we can do them via Zoom, or we can do them in a sort of hybrid form. In other words, if one parent is able to be there in person, but another parent is not, we can Zoom the other parent in so that we're all part of the discussion. And we just ask that when you talk to the admissions office, just let them know honestly what's most convenient for you. It's just as easy for us either way, so we want to work around what makes the most sense for you. Timing-wise, we like these to be done by the end of this month. That's mostly because that's when we start to build the schedules overall, so knowing what classes people are hoping to take helps us make sure they get to take the classes they want to take. Obviously, sometimes there are things we still revisit after that. That's perfectly fine, but ideally we want to have that first conversation by the end of April. And what we will do there, we will look at the course selections for next year, but we will also look more broadly at what it means for the years to come, because quite a lot of what you might be thinking about, what do we want your sons to take next year, might mean, well, what choices does that give them in their later grades? So we want to cover that as well in the conversation. And then we'll also talk a little bit about the expectations they might face from their academic work, especially if they're coming into the 9th grade, if it's their first year in high school anywhere, and what the transition into high school might mean. Once they get here, say a little bit about how grades and comments work at MBA. So we use a numerical grading scale, so a 0 to 102 Technically it's 0 to 100, but if they're in an honors class, they can earn up to an extra 2 points, so it goes up to 102. We divide the academic year into 4 quarters, and each of those is about 8 to 9 weeks long, and then there's a mid-quarter grade reporting period in the middle of it. So essentially, your sons will receive grades 8 times during the year, at each mid-quarter and quarter. Only the quarter grades are actually official, so used in any way to calculate semester averages, GPA, credit, and so on. The mid-quarter grades are intended to be a kind of snapshot. This is how things are going right now, which can be helpful if you mean that everything's reassuring, they seem to be on a good path. It can be like a little flashing warning light saying something isn't going so well in this class, let's address it before it gets to an official grade that might actually carry some more weight. You'll also receive written comments from each teacher. So each of your son's classes, the teacher will write a comment at least 3 times a year. And that's at the end of the formal grading periods, first quarter, second quarter, which is also the end of the semester, and the third quarter. And your student's advisor will send out, your son's advisor, sorry, will send out a comment at the end of the year as well. So that's designed to kind of give you relatively frequent feedback on how things are going. At the same time, while we would say in general, if there's nothing particularly to worry about, then relying on these kind of every 4 weeks you'll get an update of some kind is perfectly fine. There might be a reason you feel that you need to have a conversation with me or with a teacher or with your son's advisor in between that. And that, parents and students both have access to grades and comments online. So you can see the grades, and your son can see the grades as they're coming in from his various classes, whether it's a homework assignment, a test, a project. Even if it's not an official grading period, you'll be able to see those grades and comments. We do generally advise, to not let one bad grade on a homework or a quiz be a particular cause for alarm if the other grades are healthy. At the same time, sometimes having access to the grades can be useful just to catch problems before they develop too much. I want to say a little bit also about the typical day, so what your son can expect from the school day once he's here. So as Mr. Joy mentioned in the general discussion, it kind of starts at 10 to 8. Now for 20 minutes before that, the teachers are all available in their classrooms for help sessions, so the boys are welcome to go and find them. Those aren't formal programs, though. That's essentially coming to see a teacher to say, there's a test coming up, I'm having a little bit of trouble with this concept, I'd like some more advice on this, or there's sort of long-term advice on an essay that they want to come and talk to the teacher. And then the day proper starts with the advisory. There are then 8 academic periods in the day, and your son will have a minimum of 5 of those 8 periods being an academic class. One of those periods, and in the high school it'll be either the 5th or 6th one, will be a lunch period, and then they'll have either 1 or 2 study halls. So either 5 or 6 academic periods, 1 lunch period, and then 1 or 2 study halls. Also worth noting, 1 day a week they'll have a lab period, so their science class will go for a double period, and that will eat up the study hall for that 1 day a week. We also recently switched to a rotating schedule, so although we have 8 periods every day, the classes are actually organized by letter blocks, so A through H block, and those blocks move around in a sort of rotation. Each week goes through a full rotation of the classes. So the classes will be at different times during the day, but the timing of the day will remain pretty consistent. There's the information about how the day works with the lab period as well. Okay, just a couple more things before I turn it over to Robert and the student life side of things. It may be helpful to know the letter will include this, and apologies for parents of 10th and 11th graders. You'll have this in the letter, but just as the bulk of the parents are of rising 9th graders, this seems to be the most useful one to put up here. The good news about building a 9th grade schedule is there are not too many choices. Most of the classes are pretty set, so everyone will take English 1. Everyone will take, or almost everyone will take, either Algebra 1 or Geometry. They'll take a math class. Everyone will take biology in some form. And then everyone will take either Latin 1 or Latin 2, depending on whether they've taken Latin before coming to MBA. And of course, within these classes, there's a discussion about whether to be at the regular level or the honors level, and we'll have that conversation when we meet in person. But fundamentally, it's a pretty solid core of classes, and generally that's a typically reassuring thing when you're coming into the 9th grade, because it means you don't have to stress too much over the choices you're making, because they're not really setting you on or narrowing your options later on. It's a pretty universal set of classes. The main choice that your sons will face is twofold. First is they need to take a 5th course. The question is then also one question, will they take 5 or 6? And there are good reasons to do that, there are good reasons not to do that. And again, we'll talk about that in those individual conversations. But for the 5th course, they'll have 3 choices. They can either take a modern language course, which could be Chinese, French, German, or Spanish. They could take civics, which is considered a history course. Or they could take a fine arts course. So art, theatre, music, chorus, orchestra, or band. So again, there are good reasons to go down any of these 3 paths, and there are good reasons to go down the other ones. We will talk about that in person, and it'll vary on your son's interests and what he hopes to do later and what he's taken up to this point as to what makes most sense for him. Once the year starts, so the final portion that I'm going to talk about, just once the year starts, we have a reputation sometimes for having large homework loads, and this is the sort of thing that the 7th grade boys are most likely to ask us when they arrive, how much homework will we have to do? It isn't actually sometimes as much as the boys imagine. Here's a good rule of thumb, is that they should expect about 30 minutes of homework per day per class. Now that's allowing for, you may have a long-term assignment where if you don't do it until the day before it's due, it's going to be a lot more than 30 minutes that night, but it would have been 30 minutes a night if you'd paced it out over the amount of time. Also designed to balance their workload a little bit is the different departments have different days on which they can give tests and quizzes. The idea is you don't want a day where someone's facing 5 tests, which of course would be incredibly challenging to prepare for. So it's spaced out in such a way that there can be a maximum of 2 or 3 test periods in any day. So that's also designed to kind of help the boys, if they're planning well, to minimize the amount that they have to deal with on any given night. We would also say, and this is honestly the crucial part, students should use their study hall periods well. If someone has 5 classes, they will have 2 full period study halls during that day. So just to do sort of simple math, if they've got 5 classes and it's about 30 minutes of homework for each class and they have an hour and a half in study hall, then that may be less than an hour by the time they come home if they've made good use of that study hall. There's one teacher here, actually he's a 9th grade teacher who was a student at MBA back in the early 2000s who used to basically have almost like an OCD type schedule for the day where he knew to the minute how much time he would have in break and study hall so that he could guarantee he'd have 0 minutes left of homework by the end of the school day. When he tells the kids that, they kind of go between admiration and envy on about an equal level. But the point is, there is time built in for the homework to be done, and although it can pile up if it's not attended to, if it's properly balanced, it should never be too much. Okay, finally, what to expect in terms of an adjustment. Even for the very strongest students, and the boys coming into us in the high school are stronger than the average student coming in. So your sons are already sort of a leg up on that score. It's still going to be a challenge, just adjusting to the new space, the new teachers, the new dynamics of the school day, just the language and dynamics of the school, what certain types of assignments mean, how teachers expect them to be done, all those things are going to be relatively new. So the most important thing we would ask of you is to please encourage your son to talk with us about any difficulties he may encounter, or for you to reach out to them and reach out to faculty and bring it up. It would be expected in those first 3 or 4 weeks. In fact, we'd almost be more concerned, we will check in with them ourselves, we'd almost be more concerned if someone said, oh, everything's absolutely normal and fine, because there's going to be something that's unfamiliar, and we want them to feel comfortable saying, okay, this is causing me something of a challenge, how can I address this? Because there are a lot of people here to help. And at the same time, would say, do not be concerned, and your son shouldn't be concerned if early on in their time here, there's a little bit of a dip in the grades that they're used to. That's not at all unusual. It is not anything in particular to stress out over, and also to say, again, it's the kind of thing to come and talk to us about, either your son or you to come and talk to us about. There are plenty of academic support options on campus. There are the advisors and teachers themselves, there are peer tutors, there are academic counselors and other academic support staff, and we can even, if need be, recommend outside tutors if it becomes necessary. But again, the key thing is being aware of those concerns or questions and having the boys feel comfortable coming to us so that we can give them any help they might need. So that's where I'm going to leave things for a moment. We'll both be back for a Q&A at the end, but in the meantime, I'm going to turn it over to Robert Sawyer.
Thank you, Dr. Boyd. I'm Robert Sawyer. I teach 10th grade English here, coach the 9th grade football team, and work as the dean of the high school. So in the dean of the high school office, there are myself, there are 5 associate or assistant deans, and there's Ms. Angela Power. And we work together effectively to work through areas of student life outside of the classroom and athletics. So those would be areas like class officers, leadership, service, student clubs, attendance, school trips, school events like prom and homecoming, discipline. Those are some of the areas that your son and I will work together on in our office. The dean's office list. We enjoy working with the boys. We hope that your son doesn't make his name on the dean's list. The official Nixon enemies, that would be a worse list to be on, and we do not have a dean's list here. So what we'll talk about here tonight are one of the first things that we will do together is work on ways to sort of onboard your son to life at MBA, especially with student life, sort of becoming a part of the community. And so that's what I'll be talking to you about for a few minutes. One of the first areas that we would recommend, and this is especially for the 9th grade boys, is a program that we call the Long Mountain Wilderness Adventure. Okay, so this is a camp that we have for the rising 9th grade boys at our Long Mountain facility in McMinnville, and it's July 6th to 9th. And I'm going to run you through a few other programs like that and events that might be helpful to you. All of this will be sent out later, by the way. So one of the first things that we do for the freshmen is on August 16th, we have a freshman class Ocoee rafting trip. We take the entire class to the Ocoee River and we go rafting. We do a similar trip for the sophomores, usually in the fall, well, always in the fall, to Kings Island, and for the juniors to Holiday World. So those are 3 trips that we take that are, the point of which is for the boys to have fun, to get to know each other, and especially for your son as a new student in the class to get to know some of his classmates. Another activity that we think is very useful is what we call an activity fair. It's on August 25th, and this is essentially an open house for school clubs. So every school club will set up a sort of display booth, and it's on the first Wednesday, the second Wednesday of the school year. All the boys can go around, meet the sponsors and members of the clubs, and kind of find out about some areas of school life that they might be interested in. We also believe that ceremonies are important, rites of passage. So for the 9th graders, we do what's called a freshman patch ceremony. It'll be on September 3rd this year. All the boys will receive a patch. And this is emblematic of their sort of joining the high school class together at MBA, beginning their high school journey together. For the sophomores, we do a sophomore service ceremony in the fall. And for the juniors, we do a junior ring ceremony. That junior ring ceremony is in early December, and it's the time when the boys receive their class rings. Another campus-wide favorite event is the MBA Carnival. It's on Friday, September 17th. This is an event that we host. It's a community event, and we'll ask lots of your sons to help volunteer working the carnival. It's a great way to kind of get to know the community. If you have younger siblings, we invite them to come. It's before a football game as well. For the freshman class, this week we are conducting the class officer elections for the rising sophomore, junior, and senior classes. But for the rising freshman class, we delay those elections until next fall. And we do that as a way of making sure that we allow incoming 9th graders the chance to run for a class office. Okay? So if your son is interested in running for a class office in mid-September of next year, if he's a freshman, he'll have the opportunity to run. If your son is a sophomore or junior, those elections will have already happened, but there are still certainly other ways that he can get involved in student leadership, leadership of a club, team, and that sort of thing. Another event that is a kind of a big community favorite is our spaghetti supper and homecoming dance. Those are on October 1st and 2nd of this year. It's a tradition for the MBA freshmen to help serve spaghetti at the spaghetti supper. and that's on Friday night. And then on Saturday night is the high school homecoming dance. For a lot of the boys, this will be the first time that they've asked a girl to a dance and asked a date and that sort of thing. And so it's a nice way to kind of teach them through some of that process. Of course, in the fall, football games and school-wide events, pep rallies, other athletic events are also a big part of life at MBA in the fall. So we would encourage you to find ways to help get your son involved, encourage him to go to as many of those things as possible. That's really kind of one of the keys to life at MBA is to attending the school play, attending the athletic event and cheering on his classmates. That sort of thing we think is very important. A few notes for you that might be kind of more business items that I thought would be helpful to you. As we think about the timing of this meeting, being a meeting to really get us through the spring and the summer, we'll, of course, have another meeting for new families and a picnic in August, sort of as we ramp up the beginning of next school year. So the timing on this meeting is really to think about things between now and then that you might want to have on your radar. So a few that might be helpful for you as new parents. One is you'll soon be receiving information about medical forms, and we would ask you to go ahead and complete those over the summer. If your son's driving or will be driving soon, you'll get an email about parking applications. As they mentioned, student email, login credentials, and notifications, those will be coming as well. Those are the type of little business things that if you take care of now, it'll sort of make the beginning of the year a lot easier for you. We do a lot of emailing here, and so both for yourself and for your son, especially if he's not in the habit of getting a lot of emails from school, that might be just a good little habit to help him begin to develop. Setting up a notification system somehow, be it on a phone or a watch, kind of making sure that he's aware of when he receives emails and learning how to reply to them and that sort of thing. I recently found myself, my wife called me out last week. In back-to-back sentences, complained about the number of emails that I receive as a parent from my kids' school, and then also complained about MBA parents not reading the emails that I sent them. So we do send quite a few of them, and I know it can be sometimes overwhelming, but we ask that you read them because many of the schedule and calendar items in there are really helpful. As Dr. Boyd mentioned, MBA Scholar is also an important thing that you'll want to know for communication. Information will be going out soon about textbook ordering, and athletic information. Signing up for next year's athletic events, especially for the fall season, will begin soon, so be on the lookout for those emails. A couple of dates that you want to make sure you don't miss and don't let kind of sneak up on you are registration and social awareness and the first day of school. Those are sort of the first three things that your son will need to pay attention to. So as you look on the school website and receive emails, kind of be on the lookout for those. So registration will be the first thing that your son will do here that's sort of an official school day, and then what we call the social awareness day, and then our first day of school. We'll also be having in mid-October a parent-teacher conference for all of the new MBA high school students. This will be a conference that you and your son's advisor will have just to check in on how the first quarter has gone for him, and your advisor will sort of be reporting on behalf of all the teachers things that are going well, things that can be improved, and that sort of thing. Returning MBA high school students will not have that conference, and you won't have that conference unless you request it after this first quarter. So it's sort of a touch point that we'll have in October, and then again by appointment if needed. A few other things that you may want to note. Mothers Club Luncheons, we have one for the freshmen and sophomores on September 2nd, and juniors and seniors on September 3rd. And that's really a great time for MBA mothers to kind of find out about some of the events going on within the Mothers Club and other sort of areas of student life that you as a mother might be interested in. Referenced this earlier, but several areas of kind of communication and information that you may want to have on your radar. We have an online weekly calendar that we'll send out that's really helpful to kind of plan your calendar and schedule items. We send out a weekly parents push page. That's a really important source of information. We'll send updates and notifications about important things that are coming up. Each month we send out a PDF calendar online. Of course, that's sent out at the beginning of the month, so if anything changes after that, if you see a discrepancy in an email you receive and the monthly PDF calendar, usually the email would be more updated. Your son's advisor is also a great source of information for calendars, kind of upcoming events and that sort of thing, as well as MBA Scholar and the website. So a final note on that topic is, as you can see, the calendar tends to fill up quite a bit around here. And so as you're starting to plan for next year, we do ask that you pay attention to that. We protect the school day and the school attendance fairly diligently here. And so we would ask that you please partner with us in that, in checking for school dates. Before you book the flight, please check to make sure it works with the school calendar. We do ask for you to pay attention to that sort of thing about attendance policies. I think that's it for my portion of the presentation. So we're going to end tonight with a little bit of a Q&A. Dr. Boyd was kind enough to offer this, that if you have sort of a softball or easy question, I'll be happy to handle it. If you have a thorny issue or a complaint, Dr. Boyd said he would take it. So with that being said, any questions about any of the things we've just gone over?
I just want to see the homework slide one more time.
Do you want me to go back to it?
So I can take a picture and show my son.
Where was it? Right here.
A lot of clubs available. How many should it be active in?
About 3. And a little bit of that would depend on the nature of the club. So, for instance, the disc golf club has a few times a year when they get together during the school day and they throw disc golf. Your son could do that with not really much time commitment. There are some other clubs that take a lot of time investment. The service club would be the biggest one. It's almost an entity unto itself. And so the answer to that varies a little bit, but on average, I'd say 3. One sort of strategy that we recommend is, as your son's younger, try to find several that he might be interested in, kind of dab his toe in the water in several of them. As he gets older, we think it's probably better to find a few that he can really sort of dive into more deeply and really put his energy into. And so that's kind of a common strategy.
And just to add briefly to that as well, part of that is that, in later years in high school, that's a chance to find some leadership through active roles in the clubs, and it can be very, very meaningful to the boys as well. These things they found extracurricularly that they're very interested in, it becomes a great thing for them to be able to talk about that time here as well.
So to be the candidate, are there specific ones that they have to sign up for, like at a specific time, or are they able to kind of go in between those and just kind of try several of them out? Or once they sign up for one, are they able to?
We try. Robert can say a little bit more about this from the activity fair, how that works, but in general we try and encourage them to, if they're going to sign up for it, to stick to it. But I think if a boy were to say, oh, I didn't even know this other club existed, and actually I'm not that active in the one I did sign up for, I'd like to switch, that would welcome that and say, okay, well, go with what you're going to be involved with. But the activities fair is the place where kind of everything is set up for them to choose from, which is early in the school year.
That's right.
Will the students have any access to the Wellness Center during any of the academic periods, say a study hall or like an academic period where they would maybe have a weightlifting class or a wellness? Is that going to be incorporated in any part of their academic day?
That is an excellent question, which we have begun talking about, and I can try and pretend to give you a definitive answer, but it won't quite be one. We're still basically trying to figure out, the fall semester will be the first time when the Wellness Center, hopefully with no or very few mitigations, can actually be used for that. Certainly for things like fitness classes, we would want to use it. We haven't yet quite decided what other roles it might serve during the day. At the moment, some boys have had access to it sometimes, and there's a cafe they can go to, and we still need to figure out, we want it to play a role in their day. What exactly that role will play, not sure yet. And probably what we first started off with, we'll realize we want to make adjustments to it as the year goes on.
and maybe this may not be what you're asking, but traditionally we do ask the boys not to go do the athletic portions of the day during the school day. So for instance, if a boy has a study hall, the weight room isn't open for him to go get a workout in during that time. Now there are times when, let's say maybe he's injured and he needs to go to see the trainer, do a little rehab that would involve something physical. We do that a little differently. Sometimes right now where the boys have access in there, even kind of informally, would be maybe the second after their lunch period when some of them will go shoot basketball in the gym or go to the turf field and throw a football around, that sort of thing. So that's happening now, and as Dr. Boyd mentioned, will likely expand, but probably will not go into sort of official athletic events during the school day anytime in the near future.
What are the opportunities for a son who's very athletic but may not be good enough to be on a varsity or junior varsity team?
So most athletic programs well, it varies whether they're sort of cut or no cut. So if it was, track or cross country, there would certainly be something for them to be involved in if they were, just generally athletic. If it's something like golf, it's going to be a pretty, strict cut at a certain number. So some of it depends on exactly which sport they'd be interested in playing. But we typically have in most athletic programs a pretty broad range of teams, so that if it's, you don't have to be, heading to be a varsity starter to be able to take part in the particular program.
But like if he's a basketball player, but he's not going to be good enough to be on one of the school teams, is there a intramural program, that sort of thing?
Yeah, and I think, in my opinion, that's one of the things the NBA does best, is sort of finding ways for boys to find an athletic event that works well for them. So we do have an intramural program, and we have, especially for a school our size, a really wide variety of sports. And I would say that's kind of a distinguishing aspect of our school. So if you go to the senior sports banquet, which is coming up in a few weeks, almost invariably, there'll be a few seniors who will speak about their athletic experience, and almost invariably, here will be the story they'll tell. I came in the NBA and I thought X was my thing. I got cut from the team, or I realized it wasn't my thing, and then I found my way to Y or Z, and I found out that that's my thing, and now I'm going to college to do that. So we have several sports that, probably 10, 15, 20 years ago, students at ABA wouldn't have participated in. They're really good for activities like that. Crew is a good example of a boy who's willing to work hard and may not be great at catching and throwing the ball. He can be good at crew. And we've got several like that. I don't know if that sort of speaks to what you were asking, but in my opinion, that's kind of a strength of the offerings here.
And I'll add one more quick thing onto that, is that the athletic facilities are not territorial to like being on the varsity sports. Fieldhouse has basketball courts in it. They can go play pickup basketball in there when the team's not practicing. It's not like it would be off limits to them. The tennis courts are open to them whether they're on the tennis team or not, the soccer field. So, they're often like, there's an extracurricular soccer club, which is basically people who love playing soccer, but they're not playing on any of the teams, but they, on a non-pandemic year, would be out there every weekend as well playing soccer on the fields.
And don't they have A, B, C teams for particular sports too that kind of offer a little deeper bill?
Yes, but primarily C teams are for the middle school. So by the time we get to the high school, we usually have a varsity, a JV, and for a few of the sports, a freshman team.
So you mentioned soccer club, and I see there's things like the mountain biking club and stuff. If they were to get involved in an active club, would they be able to do that and mix it with strength and conditioning to kind of count towards your sport for that season, or?
Yeah, it varies a little bit on exactly what they are doing. Typically, strength and conditioning is always an option if they are doing some kind of either travel sport or outside sport. Like there is a boy who's a very, very active mountain biker, and if he were doing strength and conditioning during a season and there were a mountain biking event that he was going to take part in, then he would, likely be able to work that out. But that's generally on a pretty sort of ad hoc basis, depending on the boy. If the boy is trying to juggle too many things at once, it doesn't tend to always work out too well.
We'll switch gears a little bit. They're talking about technology. What technology are they using for our academic community?
So, yeah, our general approach is to be a bring your own device school, which is that we don't prescribe any particular type of tablet, laptop, or device. In fact, technically, we don't require it at all. So the experience of this year has suggested that we might look at strongly encouraging it, especially amongst junior school students. But essentially, our tech department will provide support and help for any type of device the boys bring if they bring one, a tablet, a laptop, or any other type of electronic device. This has been a year where we've used technology more than previously, and as Mr. Farrell alluded to in the presentation, even the teachers have figured out how they can use more things. But at the moment, we don't require it, but we will support any device that would build some users.
That brings me to the next question, especially with what has happened with the pandemic. How easily were your students able to transition from like having, like my son is coming from a school where he has a laptop already, and so once they were home, it was like just open up your computer and everything is already there. So granted, something like that happens, again, God forbid. Would they just be using whatever type of technology they have, and all their work is online, I'm assuming?
Just to be clear, you're asking if we ever had to go remote again, would it work like that?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, so everything should be, the assignments would be available online, the class meetings would happen online, the assessments would take place online. So in theory, again, the one time it may happen in the future, we're trying to keep this a little bit low-key as far as the boys are concerned, but they may be in for a rude shock when snow days next year. But that's, those are times when we might, especially if there's more than one day off, where we might say, okay, well, we're going to need to be able to do this. Hopefully not for a reason such as the pandemic again. Sorry.
What's the attendance policies right now?
Well, the attendance policy is via school. No, so every day our attendance is taken in that advisory period, and it's reported. And so if, let's say, your son has a doctor's appointment or has an anticipated absence for something that would be approved, we ask that you notify us ahead of time. For anything that's not school related that's anticipated, we ask for a prior notification that we would then approve. And so, let's say, obviously something that's like a funeral or a significant family event, a wedding or something like that, within reason, obviously we're going to do what we can to make that work. If it's a request to, leave 2 days before spring break because the flights to Denver are cheaper 2 days earlier, that's probably not a great reason, and we would probably say we'd like for you to stay at school for those days.
I did get one email that said, "Dear Dr. Boyd, I need to miss school on Friday because."
Yeah, what's your policy on smartphones?
In what?
Well, I mean, do you restrict the usage of, or, I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, so there are restrictions on when and where boys can use phones on campus and for what purpose, smartphones in particular, but they're allowed to happen with them. Because there will sometimes be times in class where they might have a reason to ask their teacher if they can find some information on it. If the teacher approves of it, it's a useful thing for them to have. But we don't want them, there is a sort of reflex action when they walk out of the classroom, the first gesture is towards the phone rather than talking to the person next to them. In fact, they may be texting the person next to them. So the idea is there are times and spaces on the campus when you can use it, and times when you should not be using it.
Yeah, so the phone policy is really the same as any device policy. So we do let the phones, work the same in a classroom as a computer would be. As in, a student says, I need to look something up. If you would allow a computer in that same situation, we would allow a phone. Now, that being said, there are places on campus, as Dr. Boyd referenced, that student device use is allowed. And then, of course, in a classroom, when a teacher allows it, it would always be allowed. A teacher said, get out a device and let's do something on there. But in a normal year, students would not be allowed everywhere on campus to either use their computer or their phone. They would have to go to certain areas of campus. This year, because of our dependence on technology, because the pandemic has brought out so much more online material, we have adjusted that. But that's likely just kind of a one-year adjustment because of the pandemic. Our hope would be to go back to our standard procedure policy before that.
But are there any apps in your firewall that you kind of block, like for social media, things like that?
That's a good question. No. We've gone back and forth about that, and we've just decided that part of educating boys at this time is also sort of learning responsible use of these devices, trying to educate them on why we would try to steer them away from dangerous things. But no, on campus we don't have certain things firewall.
What about in study halls, the use of technology in a study hall? Is it expected that in a study hall you're there to study versus do other things that can be done on a device?
With very rare exceptions, yes. So typically, the same rules would apply in a study hall as in a classroom. You may have a device out as long as the study hall proctor is confident that you are using it for an assignment or to communicate with teachers or with other reasonable campus-related activities. But you should not be using it to watch sports highlights or be playing video games or anything like that. Just because if you are designated to be in study hall, now there are boys who have a high enough average get to be on the privilege list, which means they don't have to report to a study hall location. They can be anywhere on campus, often in the library, and the thought is, they've shown that they are capable of staying on top of their assignments. Now, there's still some things they shouldn't be using their devices for, but there's no one quite as actively monitoring them as if they're in a study hall setting.
In the study hall, is it, so just to understand, is that a monitored situation, yes, or is it a culturally enforced situation?
If we refer to them as being in study hall, we basically mean they have a location with a proctor they need to report to. The boys who qualify because of their academic average not to have to do that, right, they're on the privilege.
But if you're there, okay, got it.
Yeah, but if they're in a study hall, then yeah, the same rules apply. It should only be for academic work or other campus-related.
And like you said, enforced by a proctor versus
yes,
just a cultural enforcement.
Yeah.
Okay.
When will the handbook go out? That has all this info.
That's right. So the handbook is finalized and sent out in July. Likely not much from the handbook from this year is online right now, and most of this will not change from year to year. Each year there are a few tweaks here and there, but it might also be worth noting any changes that we make from this year's handbook to next year's, we specifically send out notification about that, sort of hear the new updates from last year's handbook. So,
and you go online and see that where we're at going.
So if you go to @ school, and then there's an area called Handbook. It's on that website.
Yeah, I saw the academic day ends at 3:10, and after that you have club activities. What is the average time of club activities that you may expect from any?
That will vary a little bit by the athletic activity itself. So the major varsity sports, it could be 2.5 hours or so, 2.5 to 3 hours if it's a big game is coming up. If it's debate and there's a tournament coming up, it could be about the same. If it were JV tennis, for example, you would probably expect closer to 1.5 to 2 hours after school. So it will vary a little bit, and some of it will vary by the point in the season as well that they're at. But a couple of hours would be a reasonable expectation.
Thank you.
Notice that there, in a few of the emails mentioning summer, there are some summer academic enrichment programs. They had mentioned that you would be notified if you needed to, if there's a suggestion for your child to take one or two of those options. Has that already happened, or is that coming?
That is coming soon. So there's two types of summer enrichment programs for the high school. There are the kind of academic prep ones, which are the ones that you're referring to, where we might say, we recommend he take this class. It would never be a sort of mandatory he must, but if the admissions office put some thought into saying we think this might be a good one to take, it will be coming out in the next sort of, couple of weeks. There are also other enrichment courses that are purely optional. They are free to all MBA students, incoming or current students, and they are designed much more for like, you know, intellectual deep dive kind of thing. So there's some on game theory, there's some on business management in sports, there's some on robotics, there's some on there's actually some on miniature war games, strategy games kind of thing. There's ones on preparing for college essays. Those we'll share those with everyone. Those first come, first served. We will not recommend specific ones. They're basically, your son may look at them and say, hey, that sounds interesting. I'd like to spend a week doing that. It's free. So those are the other ones to keep an eye out for as well.
Can I add something to that? Back to the first category that Dr. Boyd mentioned. So sometimes the admissions committee, or our admissions office will recommend, we think your son should take this class to prep for this subject. You're also welcome to sign up for any other ones that aren't recommended. So for instance, if you've diagnosed, you know what, we feel like his grammar isn't quite what it might need to be ready for his 9th grade grammar class at MBA, you could sign up for that without a recommendation. And there are a few that are good kind of catch-alls, like a high school study skills course that, you know, if you're just kind of looking for something to do to kind of get in around campus and then find the buildings and that sort of thing, might be a good option, whether they've been recommended or not.
Fall break, spring break, do you guys mirror normally the metro public schools, or does it generally fall at different times? Does that make sense?
I'm sorry?
Fall break and like spring break, does it generally mirror the metro public school schedule, or does it, in case they have siblings, for example, for fall break?
Some years yes, some years no. We
but
do.
that'll be in the, that's already been
We do tend to try to pair with several of our colleague schools where we know we have multiple family overlaps. So if possible, we try to mirror with Harp Hall because we have a lot of overlap with them and a few other schools with whom we have, you know, we share families. And a lot of times that lines up with Metro, but not always.
Fall break for us typically will follow, we do the PSAT in the middle of October, and that tends to be on a Wednesday, and our fall break will essentially follow that, which will be, again, around the time a lot of other fall breaks happen, but it won't necessarily always perfectly mirror all the local school systems.
One more quick question. Is speech or debate available to 9th graders as one of those electives with civics and art or during their freshman year?
It's not an academic class. There's a 7th grade speech class that is an academic class, but in the 9th grade, I mean, the debate program is definitely open to 9th graders, and that counts as their athletic activity. It's an afternoon activity. So yeah, so debate, theatre, and robotics all count as athletic activities. They meet every afternoon. But there's no debate class during the day.
And speech is not that
Not
was
in-
only 7.
Yeah, not in the high school. There's a junior school speech class, but not in the high school.
And you're required to take 2 or participate in 2 sports or athletic?
You're required to take something every season. Again, it could be, you know, debate one season, soccer the next season. It could be basketball in the winter. It could be a mix of things. We probably would generally recommend, you know, trying a couple of different things, especially in the freshman year. But there may also be people who know, you know, this is my. If they're a swimmer, for example, they may do all 3 seasons of swimming because, you know, they already are a competitive swimmer, and that's the way they do it. They still need something every season, but it can be different things every season, all the same things.
Tryouts for some of these sports? Will there be an announcement for that?
Yeah, the athletic department will send an announcement about the sport tryouts. Each season there are a few sports that are offered that are non-tryout, and then there are a few that are tryout, specifically because of sort of team size limitation, you know, tennis court availability, basketball court availability, that sort of thing. The athletic department will send those out. Let's do one more, then it sounds like we're kind of slowing down the questions, and then we may let anybody else who wants to ask a question, stick around, and everybody else can feel free to call in.
I'm just gonna piggyback off the trial. If your kid plays multiple sports, they play football and ball, and the football season goes, but basketball starts with the trial. The football season is done. How does that even work?
We definitely, all of our coaches understand that we share athletes here. We encourage multi-sport athletes, so that's 100% a part of what they would expect. A good example would be baseball trials happened in February, but there was a secondary tryout for the boys who were doing basketball or wrestling who wanted to try out for baseball, but missed the initial baseball trial. So that's very common, and it's we certainly would not want a boy not to go play a sport that he likes because of a different sport.
I think basketball even has their tryouts relatively, of course, in the summer.
Basketball is in the summer.
Preempt that. That's right. All right, well, thank you all for being here. If a question occurs to you the moment you get home that you wish you'd ask now, please email either one of us. It's not the only opportunity to ask those questions. But we look forward, if you have anything more to ask us, we'll be here at the front for a little bit longer. Otherwise, we look forward to meeting you again later in the spring.
Thank you.